9:59, 30 seconds. Microphone's going hot.
Hello, hello. Oh, yep. Maybe I'll just bring it up just a little bit. Hello?
2 fingers.
Guys, mics are hot.
Okay. 2 fingers away from the microphone. 2 fingers. Welcome, everybody, to Camp, oh, not yet.
Did not cue.
He told me to go. Welcome, everybody, to our second work day of our workshop, Monster Laboratory. I'd like to thank everybody behind the scenes and all the monster makers in the Westport Library and at home for participating. And that's all my announcements. I'm going to turn it over to Bats right now. Thank you.
All right, monster makers. So we have some monsters that we're still working on. I was just talking to I think it was with you, right? This monster maker is going to be working on his environment today, and also maybe some, we could talk about you could make some little, food for your monster and that sort of thing as well. So if you feel that you're a little done with your monster creating, you can also fill in the time by making some other things like your environment for your monster if you'd like. I'm going to be up here for the next little bit, just showing little techniques that I can show you that you can add to your monsters if you'd like, just so you can just look up here and watch me for a little bit. But we're going to do this for the next, let's look here. We're going to do this for the next, say, 45 minutes, maybe 50 minutes, working on your monsters. And then we're going to move over to talking about what we're going to do next with the monsters, okay? So if you have any questions, raise your hand, and Margaret or Astrid will come over and help. We have Tatiana? Taisha. So sorry. Taisha is going to be over here with the glue gun. So 2 at a time. Remember, 2 at a time for Taisha to help you with gluing your items. And if you have several things that you need glued, think about just coming up and having them all glued at the same time too, just so it makes it easier for Taisha to glue it for you, okay? All right, so notice there's a lot of feathers over there that are really fantastic. I was looking at them yesterday, and I was trying to think of how to do it without gluing so much. So if you just do normal ties of the ends of the feather, right? So you have one right here, right? I think the oh, there we go. Let's see if we're... All right, perfect. So as you can see on the screen behind me, all right, so I've made just a tiny, just a regular knot here. And then what you could do is you can, hey buddy, how are you? Come sit down. And then you can make another knot here, right? Yep, we just started, so don't worry. And so you can make a nice strand with these. See, like this. Also today, we're gonna, I want you guys to come up with a name for your monster, okay? So if you have a name for your monster, think about it, because I think what we'll do is, when we move on to the next part, the name is gonna be very important. Now, that could be the creature's overall species, his special name, the creature's special name. It could be the name of the character, the creature itself, if there's only one creature. Now again, too, if you don't feel your monster is completely ready for presentation tomorrow, and you want to do a little more work on it, if you wanted to do more with its environment, if you wanted to make more of an environment for your monster tonight, take it home with you. Take it home with you, but bring it back tomorrow so you can present it. But, take it home tonight. And sometimes things don't have to be so finished. You could go home and ask, a parent or a guardian, if you could use, a hot glue gun if they have one, at home. But don't use things like hot glue guns and things like that without a parent or guardian around. Because let me tell you, I know so many people who have gotten very hurt on hot glue guns. Or super glue. I know people who've super glued their fingers. But they've gotten it out. But as you see here, right, so I got all these feathers here, and I could just keep working on this for hours, right, making it a long strand. But what's great about it is that you don't use super glue, right? So what you could do here is you could just keep wrapping, like you could just, if you had an endless row of this, right, of feathers, you could just wrap this around, right? See this cord? Wrap it all the way around, and you could just have all of the feathers in a row. And also, too, look at the way, too, that you could put feathers and colors together, too. So you can make a gradation, too, with it. So you start with your darkest feather here, your darkest feather blue here, to a little bit of a medium, to a lighter blue. Now, over there's also tons and tons of pipe cleaners, but there's some of these really cool pipe cleaners over there that are these thicker ones, right? They're Muppety. So what you could do with these, which are great, is if you want to make a foot, right? An easy foot. Because you might feel like, oh, you know what, my monster doesn't have any feet or paws. So just take a pipe cleaner like this. All right, wrap it around here. All right, so you got a foot right here, right? Now, what you can also do with this foot is you can do a few things. You can get another pipe cleaner of a different color, right? And you can make toes, right? So you can wrap that around. All right, so I have a three-toed monster right here. And then maybe I want to give it gold fingernails, right? Or toenails. So, there's these pipe cleaners that are over there. There's a silver, there's some gold, some really nice metallic ones. And then you can go here and just wrap it around here. Now, just a reminder, monster makers, no making of weapons today. I'm just saying that as just again because these monsters are pretty fierce enough. They don't need weapons, right? Did they get a stick? How about a walking stick? Is that okay? Not a ninja stick, but how about a walking stick? How's that? Oh wow, Evie, that's great. I love what you've done with the tissue paper. And I feel like you've been following your monster diagram, right? A little bit, yeah, which is great. All right, so look at my monster foot so far, right? It's kind of glitzy, right? And what's great is there's just so much color over there. You know, there's so many things that you can make without painting or anything. There's just texture, right? I'm going to show you in a little bit. I don't know if any of your monsters know how to make any flames, but I can show you how to make flames out of tissue paper. So here we go. We got a monster foot right here. Pretty easy, right? But that's the thing that's so fun about this part of the project is that you get to play around with some stuff and see what happens. So now we're going to move on to I'm just going to make a torch. Oh, nice. You're doing diorama style, huh? Awesome. Take a look over here, Monster Makers. This Monster Maker, your name is? Mario? Morio. Right here, he's creating a diorama right here, which is really awesome. A great way to start. Yeah, look at this. This is fantastic, right? So just start off with, regular diorama style. You can have a top on it or not. I love that there's no top on it because you can build up as much as possible. Also, too, if you want to go outside and photograph it later on, you could do, the outside with, the sunset maybe later tonight, right? Or the sky as it is right now. It's kind of bluish, cloudy, right? But you'll have this whole landscape around your creature. That's awesome. Here you go. Good work. All right, so today I'm going to show you how to make some flames. Now what you're going to do is, with flames, take a piece of tissue paper, right? And just cut They don't have to be perfect. Because if you look at a flame, it's kind of jagged a little bit. Like, see how these jagged marks here? Flames have like jagged marks there. And the same here with, the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 3 colors: orange, yellow, and red. All right, so I got my yellow and my orange done. Okay, I'm gonna work on my red right here. Oh wow, look at that. That's awesome. I'm loving what you guys are doing with all the different things. Now, Monster Maker wearing SpaceX shirt, black, yes. What is your, well, you have, like, it looks like they're hatching, right? Little hatchlings?
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to make the decision if I want these to be eggs or eyes.
Oh, let me bring it up. I want to show.
Okay, I'm trying to put this on top of it.
Okay, yeah. So this Monster Maker here, if you look here, there's these little eggs in here that look like they're going to hatch. And it's like a quite an interesting way of doing something with an already found object. It looks like, that this was maybe in the grocery store, right? And somehow it got into the rest of the eggs. They ate all the eggs and then laid these new eggs kind of thing, right? Can you imagine going to the grocery store and finding this monster eggs in here? This is very cool. Yeah, here you go. Fantastic. All right, we're doing the red here. Now you can make this small size too if you're going to put this in the mouth of the creature that you're doing. But I'm just doing it at a large size just so you can see kind of what you could do with 3 pieces of tissue paper to give that effect of flames, right? So here we got the torch, right? And we're gonna fold. Oh, so usually what you do is you have the red on the bottom, then you've got the orange on top, and I like to put the jagged corners, see here? I like to put them in the middle of the other jagged corners. So I have the reds in the back, but in between the reds, I've got this orange. And then here, I could put these sort of in between the reds a little, just to bring down the red. All right. And then we can roll this up. I rolled that a little too tight, but I'm going to do it all over again. Just do it a little looser so that, yeah, so your flames can move around a little bit. Now, what's great about this is if you have a fan, which we all are using now because it's summer, right? You can put this in front of a fan. I'm going to cut the bottoms here. Yeah. So you had like Olympic torches, right? So there you go. Very simple, right? Very, very simple. So this can also be, too, if you look, if you're trying to think of, oh, I want fire to come out of my dragon, just do the same thing but smaller, okay? Now let's see how we're doing on time. We're at 10:22. And so I think that at 10:50 we will
Now, are you done with these? Yeah. Okay, put these back. Oh, to make his face go. Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions about how to do certain things you're not exactly sure how to do them? Not really? Okay. Well, if you have anything that comes into mind, let me know. And I'm going to come up with some other things to create over here.
Hey, Bats, I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
How do you reinforce stuff? So say your monster over here is wilting. What do you
Yes.
do to make things stay strong and upright?
So sometimes, like if you want to, so like look at this right here, right? Sometimes it's better to, reinforce in the very beginning, right? So if this is going to be like this, sometimes what I will do is I will put a stronger piece of paper, right? So this piece of paper is a little bit thicker, right? And I would probably put that, here, and maybe use that instead of using the construction paper. Let's see. Now, here's something too. Thank you, Margaret, for bringing straws over, because this is something I learned in making in making spider legs. So see, you have your 2 straws here, right? And what you could do is take the straw and cup it like here, let's see if we can get that. A little close up here on my finger. All right, and then put this right in here, right? And so now you have a longer straw, right? And so then you can take the straw and you can bend it. And you can have spider legs right here like this. Right? And you probably put them on the bottom, and you can have them hang off a little bit like this. But you just bend this here just so. You can also use your scissor here, use the handle side, and just scrape it down. And so now that's going to be on there, down there like that for forever, pretty much. So that's another thing you can do with straws. I'm going to do this again. And again, you didn't have to do that with any super glue or anything, but just folding things. Now, has anyone done any origami before?
Yeah.
Yeah? Awesome. Yeah, origami is very helpful too. Literally little tricks with origami can get you pretty far without needing any tape or glue.
Does your monster have to breathe? Maybe it can breathe through its skin.
I thought someone said, does my monster have to read? Yes, right? So again, while you're working on your monsters, for the next part of the project, again, this is the part where you have to think of its environment. What environment your monster lives in, what food your monster eats, where your monster lives. Does your monster live in the ocean? Does it live in a cave? Does it live on another planet? Does it live in a star? Yeah.
Technically impossible.
Maybe a comet. If I had a toilet paper, yeah, perfect. Thank you, thank you. All right, so again, when I put this here in the toilet paper roll, right? I just make a little hole. Then I also take this on the bottom here and scrape it so it's folded over. And then I put it in the hole. And we've got legs here. Now, if you have straws and you have to throw the straws away, remember, think of the turtles. All right? So make sure you dispose of your straws properly. All right, and then you put this back in here. All right, folks, I'm just checking on the time, just to let you know you have about 50 minutes to work on your monster. I think it's pretty monsterish. It's pretty cool. He's very funny looking, but in a good way. I love it. I think it's pretty cool. I love the, so in art, they call something, when you look at a character, the character silhouette, right? So a silhouette, right, is if you look at something based on its shape, right? Not the details, but just its shape. The black, like if you cut out a silhouette, it's usually one color, but you only see the outside details, right? And so if I was to look at your silhouette, William, on your monster, it's very funny. It's got big feet, right? A big eye, tiny little arms. That's the other thing too, when you're making your creatures, you know, squint your eyes a little bit and look at the edges around your characters and say to yourself, oh, what could I add on that makes my monster silhouette a little bit more goofier, right? Or a little bit more scarier. Right here we got this, let's see if we could look here. We got the spider going on with the straws, right? And what's cool too is you can hang this too, right? Right? You could make this for Halloween, put some 8 eyes, right? So spiders have 8 eyes, right? Correct?
Randomly on here. You want to kind of smooth it through? Yeah. It's a little light, really sticks.
Also think about what your monster, if your monster has any enemies. Is your monster's enemy, you know, does it, for instance, it's little old ladies that scare your monster? Or is your monster scared of global warming? What is your monster scared of?
Or you need me to cut a hole?
So yeah, so here's a spider right here, and again, you could do that, right?
Support itself.
And you'd hang it too, right?
Can it support itself?
It can't support itself, but what you could do is put a little bit of a weight on the bottom of this here, and then that can support itself here. But I think it's kind of cool if you can hang it, right? Because then it kind of has this movement, right? As it like blows in the wind or as it's hanging. All right, I got this here. Margaret, do you have anything else that you would like me to play around with and just? As a challenge? Yeah, challenge me. Yeah, challenge me, Margaret. All right. Perfect, okay. So see these here, these are really cool, right? I made these, I think with this guy here, I made a pig nose on it, right? You know, so when you go and you're looking at junk, look at the shapes of things, right? See the shapes and say, well, what does this look like? This could be a snort, you know, the nose of a pig, right? Or it could be, what else could this be? What, it could be a mouth, you're right. It could be a mouth. You know, you could break it maybe. Maybe just bend it a little bit more. You got teeth right here. Look at that. These could be teeth. These could be a row of teeth right here. So look at the objects that you have, you know, even at home, and you say to yourself, well, what could this be, or what could that be? And look at the just objects and imagine them being other than what they are. Now, I'm going to play around with this here. This is some wire, which is pretty cool. I don't know what I'm going to do. Got these really cool chopsticks here. Also, too, if you go and have takeout food and you get like chopsticks or plastic forks or spoons, or the little containers that hold sauces and stuff. There's some really great art supplies right there that you can use for projects. You have stumped me with wire. I don't know why. Thank you. Also, when you're thinking about maybe you haven't had any supports yet for feet, think about the bottoms right here. This is something that I noticed a lot of students were creating. Say 2 plastic cups, right? Boom, boom. Those are legs and feet, and they can hold whatever item that is. It's pretty sturdy, right? So think about also those things. I see some creatures don't have any legs, but that's on purpose probably. Now here's something too that you could do. Now something I always loved doing was jellyfish, right? So take pieces of paper, and when you make a tentacle, just go all the way to the edge, right? And this is one way you can do a tentacle right here. Hey, Margaret, if you could give me a piece of any color construction paper to make a tentacle. All right, well also too, when you're working on projects, make sure your space is a little clean. My space is not very clean right now, but clean, make sure your space is a little clean so you can find everything you can find.
Yeah, it's different weights and different sizes.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. So here's a great, great shape right here. I'm gonna cut off the sides and make this a little more square, okay? And as you can see, we have these corners here, right? So just round off the corners so that you have somewhat of a circle, okay? All right, and then do more of a circle. Now, start here, right? And cut. And you're just gonna spiral into the middle of the paper, okay? Really loud cutting, isn't it? Now, monster makers, remember when you come to Taisha for something glued, it's 2 at a time, okay? All right, we're almost done here. Now look at this here, right? We have all this tentacle here, the way that this falls, right? So now you could take this, glue it in here. And look at that tentacle, right? So it's a little different than this one, which is just straight cut, right? The red, and this one here, it's a little bit longer. You can also cut it if you wanted to. So we want to cut this tentacle, right? And you can add it over here. And also what's great about this too is, then you can hang this as well. And you have a jellyfish that hangs, which is another creature. All right, students, we have, monster makers, we have 5 more minutes, okay? So, in that time, I would also advise in 5 minutes, right? We'll call things done, and then I'm gonna give you about 3 minutes to just organize your workstation, okay? Or maybe 5 minutes to organize your workstation.
For those of you at home and in the library and you want to make a diorama, shoe boxes work wonderfully. So if you have a shoe box at home, you can do that. You can use any packaged material, but you have all night to work on it until our next meeting.
So always organize your workspace, because now we're going to start working with some drawing. And this part is not really, you don't really need to know how to draw. But you need to plan some things out. Yes, so guys, I'm going to put a timer on for just cleanup, and that's 5 minutes. So just clean up your workspace. Make sure that you have markers with you and that you have a ruler with you. White pieces of paper, preferably this big. Look up here, folks. This big right here, okay? And also make sure you have a pencil just in case. And everyone looks pretty much all set, but, you know, any little pieces of whatever, you know, paper or whatever.
I'll cut that if you start on the storyboard.
Remember, you can always take it home and finish. And you can take some materials home too.
Yes, Taisha just said something great, which is take some supplies home too, all right? Don't take everything, but take some supplies home that you know you're going to work with, okay? That was a great idea. Yeah, take some items home if you're going to work on them and use them. Wow, look at these creations.
Can I present this?
You know, we're going to present them tomorrow, but I think that looks great so far. Okay? Because everyone else has some monsters that they've already completed, but I want to make sure that they get presented tomorrow, okay? This is really, really cool. I love what you did. Let me just show this. I'm actually going to present this just so that the people in the Zoom group can see this. Now, if you look at this here, this is really, really great in terms of construction. Look at here. Now he's taken, this monster maker has taken 2 pieces of paper, right? And even though it's a flat piece, he's brought some 3-dimensionality to it, right? And also too, is a great use of the straws, which is really fantastic. And I love what you did with the eyes. Now this this here, which I guess is carrying lumber, right? Okay. Which is really interesting too. I love this carrying case where he can carry firewood back to the back to his cave. But here you go. Thank you for sharing that one. We got 2 more minutes, monster makers. Now make sure that you keep everything with you. So, you know, your monster creation that you worked on yesterday, right? This blueprint that we had yesterday, right? Right? So make sure you keep that because it's all part of the process. And it's very interesting. You'll see, I'm going to show you tomorrow something very interesting about looking back on your processes and when you're creating stories and whatnot and how they all sort of relate to each other. But always keep these things because you always never know. You look back on things that you've created before, sketches or drawings, and they might not make sense at first, but then later on, you may take a look at those drawings and say to yourself, huh, there's something really interesting there. All right, folks, 1 more minute. One more minute, and then we're all done with the monsters making, and we're moving on to storyboards because we only have half an hour, okay?
Choose first. Alright, start what? Same thing like last time? No, she walked here first and then went and grabbed something.
You're not gonna do the diorama? You're gonna
It's okay, yours will get blue. You have plenty of time to do that.
Alrighty. So, monster makers, I need your attentions. Okay? 1, 2, 3, listen to me. Okay, so take a look up here, okay? Up at the screen. So I'm going to show you some examples of different kinds of books that use different elements of a mix of a graphic novel, comic book, and also 2 picture books. Now, we all know the comic book, right? The panels in a comic book, how they tell stories, how word bubbles are important in comic books, right? Let's see. So right here you can see, you know, the word, it's a very wordy book here. And there's a lot of action and action words to tell a story, right? Well, there's also many panels too, right? So like, for instance, this one here has got about, I would say 5 panels here. This one here has about 5 panels, you know, and then, but then you got this one here, it's about 7 or 8 panels. But what's really interesting is they all help tell the story and at a certain speed in a way. But comic books tend to be a little bit more action-packed, right? But then you come into this book, which is the graphic novel, right? And so graphic novels are really interesting because they tell the story in a way that's like similar to a comic book. But what's great about it is there's a different kind of pacing, right? So look here, there's a very different book, right? Even though it has the same amount of panels, there's not a lot of words, is there? And if there are words, they're very simple, they're very action. But again, it's all about the picture really telling the story, right? So what we're going to do in class for the rest of class today and into tomorrow. And that's why I was saying, think about your environments, think about your monster, what they eat, where they are, all those important details, because I would like you to create 2 pages, okay? At least 2 pages. You're more than welcome to do more than just 2 pages, but I would like to have you do a 2-page monster story, okay? With your monster in the story. Now, you can do a whole, all kinds of stuff. You could do do it in, color with markers, whatnot. You could also, too, if you're able to go home, take pictures of your monster, right, in different positions, and cut it out and put it in and collage it into your comic, right? There's a lot of things that you can do with your monster that you have, and then putting it into the story. Now, what you're wondering is, why did we make a 3-dimensional monster? Well, a lot of times, a lot of illustrators and a lot of people who, and also animators, what they will do is they'll make a 3-dimensional version of whatever character that they're working on, especially if they're going to be working with that character for a long period of time. So say, for instance, if I was a comic book illustrator for Batman, right? I probably have several different Batman models in my house, in my studio around me, and that I can actually look at, play with, see the different positions, see where, what does Batman look like from up above, all those kinds of things, because those elements help me figure out my character and the positions of where my character can do, actions that my character can do. And again, it's important, that you have your characters that you created. So, let's see. Now, Margaret brought this one, which is great. It's a picture book, right? Now, picture books mostly, right, don't have a lot of words in them. This picture book has no words, basically. But what's great about it is that it has a graphic novel quality to it. See, right here, you have this message in a bottle, and you watch the message in the bottle get to shore, right? There's no words, it's all just pictures. So if you wanted to, you can also do you could do wordless comics as well. And you also could do it also in the form of a picture book, but you're gonna, you might need more pages, okay? But again, I'm gonna show you how to create those little windows. So when you're thinking about your story, try to at least get, I would say, try to get 5 panels into 1 page, okay? So what you can do is, you can have the introduction. So usually if there's an introduction to a graphic novel, right here, this is a great version right here. Usually they set it up with a scene, right? So right here you have a car that's driving in, through a meandering, mountain cliff area, and you have the characters talking to each other. That's the introduction of the character. Okay, so think about your different sizes and the different shapes that you want to create. And I would use a ruler and also just use a pencil to do it. I'm using just a Sharpie because it's easier for you guys to see. Now sometimes you'll also find in some comic books, right? You'll see where there might be just around, different shapes within it. So you could put, a round shape in here where, so say for instance, they usually use that, 2 shapes here because there's a person talking on the phone here, And then there's like another person talking on the phone over here. Like they're talking in two different places, but they're talking to each other. So sometimes they will play around with shapes like that. Sometimes yeah, something like that, and say there's a thunderstorm and it cuts off that communication between the two people on the phone, right? So you could put a thunderbolt in there and say that cuts off the communication between the two people talking. There's a lot of different things that you can do with the shapes. And just to play around with the shapes too, and see what you can do with them. So again, this is a little bit of just a game of seeing what you can do. Again, I would like 5 panels per page, okay? And again, while you're working on this, maybe in the beginning you write out what your character's name is, what you think your story is going to be about, right? And you could go off from that point. Think of what characters are going to be in your story, what environment's going to be in your story. Does anyone have any questions? All right, monster makers, go ahead. So see how William right here, up here, so I made these squares, right? So like in the graphic novel, you've got these squares here telling the story, right? Hey, William? So you got the squares here telling the story, right? So you just have to draw 5, or you could put more than 5 squares on a page, okay? What was that? I can't hear you, William. What was that? Okay, so you're writing about your monster, right? And you're going to write about what your monster, does your monster have enemies? Does your monster have friends? It could be a story about friends. And if also, too, here's some example. Do you guys want to pass these books around? Can we do that, Margaret? Yeah? So here, take these books for inspiration because you might not be able to see up here.
Got it.
There we go. Now also too, if you take your characters at home and sometimes what is really interesting is if you are someone who uses other media other than drawing, right? I know some artists who do, just sculpture art. And what they'll do is they'll take these, they'll plan everything out. So they'll, put all their squares in and then they'll say, okay, well, I want a big squid monster, right? And I want him right? He's coming. And I want a person's face here freaked out by the monster coming in, right? And it is coming, and I want a skyline, right? Some buildings here in the background. It is, I want some tentacles here.
Hey, Bats, while you're busy drawing, do you ever number your panels in pencil so you know where your action is going?
Ooh, Margaret, that is a very good, good suggestion. You know, if you feel that you need to put numbers down, you're more than to put down numbers. This right here is more of a sketch process, right? And sometimes what you can do with this process is move on to doing, more finalized panels, doing final art, right, for pieces. And I'm going to show you examples of that tomorrow with some examples of some picture books that I've done that you can see, the sketch process and then the final version. So right here, so you see right here, I have like these characters in the foreground running from the giant squid monster. We've got some buildings here in the midground. And so what you can do is you can plan these out, but also too that since you have your monsters with you tonight, if you are, taking some of them home, take pictures of your monster and, make a scene that's based on the drawings that you've created. There's a great artist by the name, they're called Red Nose Studio. I'll show you some examples of that tomorrow, showing some of their creations that they do. But today I just want you to just sketch out some ideas, come up with ways of how you want to talk about your monster, think of ways that you want to maybe incorporate what you've made already with your monster, but also think about all the things that your monster is, right? And that can help you with creating a story. This is also too, in certain panels, you can have what your environment is going to be, right? So maybe I have a castle over here, and I have that, in that castle is where my monster lives, right? And I've got some tiny characters here. Maybe they're driving in with a car, right? Making their way up to the castle. And then with this circle here that I put over it, maybe that shows the interior of the car, what's going on with those characters. And these sketches don't have to be perfect, trust me. My preliminary sketches, when I'm working on a book project or I'm working on an illustration project, they're not very pretty at first. But it's all about putting down your ideas. And then once you have the idea down, then you can build up and find, what my characters are going to look like, Is my character going to have glasses? Is my character going to have, braces? So right here, like right here, I have this right where I have this castle up here, right? There's some clouds. Maybe there's some lightning here. And I have this little car, right, with its lights on, and it's turning up to the castle where the monster is coming. Say they're lost, you know? And here's the characters inside the car, right? So there's a lot of things that you could do with just adding, you know, putting it, you know, adding shapes on top of each other. And also think about the size of your monster in comparison to the environment. So look at the squid monster that I did up here, right? It's a huge, huge monster in comparison to the people, right? Or also look over here at the castle over here. That's probably a normal sized monster that probably lives in the castle. Maybe the monster is the entire hill of where the castle is sitting upon. Think of just the sizing of your characters in comparison to the rest of the characters. Your monster could be average size, like just, you know, just 5 feet tall, right? Or it's a tiny little monster, right? That's maybe like a foot tall, maybe it's even 6 inches tall. Your monster can be any size, but also play around with it. So say you have a tiny monster, right? Think about the proportion of that monster to, say, you know, a drinking glass, right? Right, so, and then you got a straw in that glass. What was it, Will? I have made, right now I'm going to be having 4 books out. I have got 2 books that I'm working on now. I'm going to show them to you tomorrow, the stuff that I worked on with 2 of those books. It depends. Sometimes, William just brought up a good question. He asked me how many books that I've done. I'm working on 2 books now, but I have 2 books out that are out already. But the books that I've been working on, what I'll do is I'll do a lot of sketches by hand. Sometimes I do sketches on my iPad. And what I'll do is I'll put them into most of the time I will work a little bit with using watercolor on paper, and then I put it into the computer and I play around with Photoshop and come up with my illustrations that way. Or sometimes I hand do them with just paint. And it depends on the book that I'm working on. But a lot of times I will use the computer, because a lot of times when you're working on a book, right, a lot of times there might be needs of changes, right? Like if the color's not right for the printer, or there needs to be more yellow in something or whatever, it's very easy to do that in Photoshop and other ways of drawing on the computer. And it's very easy to just work on it like that instead of doing the whole painting over again. Sometimes if you're working on a painting, a piece, like for instance, this is my first book that I did here. This is called Groggle's Monster Valentine, right? And so if I did, say for instance, the cover. So if you look at the cover, I remember I worked on the cover. We had to get it just right because purple does not show up very well when you print it, okay? So when you print out purple, it comes out either too dark or too light. Yeah, very smart, very, very smart. So when we had to do this book, we had to get the purples just right so that it would print out perfectly. But I remember having to play with a bunch of different purples. If I did this all by hand, I would have had maybe 5 cover paintings. And that would have been a lot of work. But all I had to do is just play around with adjusting the different purples in the computer. So we were talking about sizes of characters, even when they're small. Here's like a drinking glass here. Maybe we're gonna put a fork here. And say we have, let's see what this monster could be. So think about, here's a little monster that I just created here, and think about the fact that it's, how big is it in comparison to a fork or, a drinking glass? And think about that size throughout when you're making your other things. That monster has to be a certain height, it has to be as, big as this part of the fork, right? And it has to be maybe about half the size of a regular drinking glass, right? So think of that size throughout all the times when you're thinking about putting that character in different places. Now, let's see. Folks, it's 11:18. We have 10 more minutes, just to let you know. Okay? Does anyone have any questions about anything so far? Now, also, too, tonight, these are things you could be working on, too, tonight if you want to. Take them home and think about them. Think about, again, the pacing of your page. Here, even though these stories don't really go together, I'm just showing you different ways that you can lay out a page. Tonight, just, lay out your page and, have it ready so that tomorrow you can, color things in and, be ready to, just play around with that. You can do that as well. Now, I know right now I've pretty much put you all on the spot when it comes to this part of the project, because now you have to come up with a story, and you have to come up with all of this part. Again, right now, you might be just completely baffled about what you're going to do with this story, and that might take some time. That's where tonight you have some time to think about it. You can come up with maybe tonight you just jot down what you would like to, fill it in the squares. Sometimes I know some artists that literally will write in the panel, right? They'll say, okay, this panel here is going to be, it's going to be like a King Kong kind of monster, right? Climbing the Empire State Building, right? And they'll just write it down here. And they know that that's going to be the height, right, of what they're going to put their monster in, right? And they know that that panel is what that image is going to go into. So tonight you might even just say to yourself, tonight I'm going to put in my panels I'm going to write in my panel what is going to happen in that panel, right? So King Kong is climbing the Empire State Building. All right, so maybe this panel here, we've got some fighter planes, right? Coming in. Right, we got some fighter planes coming in here. So, maybe she might, for instance, my friend who writes and illustrates graphic novels, she will say, okay, you know what, I know that my fighter planes are going to look like this. So she just sketches it real quick, okay? She's like, okay, they're going to be old planes, and they're going to look like that, right? And they're going to come in, I'm going to have one in the foreground and one here and then one back here, right? And then here you're going to have, say, King Kong, right, swatting at the planes. So she knows, she's like, it's going to be the top of the building here. The monster is going to be up here, and he's going to be swatting the planes, right? So these indicate planes. This indicates King Kong. And she, and the graphic novel artist will also write too, will be okay, swatting planes. And then right here, let's say, well, that's where we're getting at, yeah. See how it plays along, right, William? So, all right, so right here, so I'm thinking to myself, okay, so King Kong is swatting at the planes. I want to do a close-up of King Kong's hand losing grip on the Empire State Building, right? So I'm going to do that in a circle right here, and say we see, in the background here, let's say King Kong looks like he's about to fall off the Empire State Building, right? Over here, and then right here, we see King Kong's hand slipping from the tower. So you see, so as you play around with this, again, look at how this doesn't look like anything, right? But to you, this looks like a plan, right? So, in the next, few minutes, just think about it in that way, right? It doesn't have to look perfect. It doesn't have to look great, But tomorrow you can play around with that stuff, right? The little details and that sort of thing. But just plan out, like, just how everything, looks here. And again, you could just write things like between now and say tonight, right? If you want to take this home. And I think you should all maybe take this home just to think about it, right? You can add some things and, have some thoughts throughout the night. And you can even talk about it with your parents too. Say, Mom, Mom or Dad or Grandma or Grandpa, what do you think about this story? I want to add this or that, and you guys can work on it together a little bit too. So, everyone also could have little suggestions. Like, I'll be honest, editors are so when I bring on a project in, like, usually it'll be a little bit more planned out here. There'll be more picture making and whatnot. And I'll bring it into an editor to say, this is what I'm going to be working on when I'm working on this illustration. And the editor, what they will do is they'll look at it and they'll be like, okay, yeah, I like this. Well, maybe instead of the planes coming in, maybe it's something else. Or maybe if you could push out the planes a little bit, they're too close in that scene. Or, I like the way King Kong looks here, but can you make him a little smaller? Can you make his head a little bit bigger? And that's when an editor comes in and adds these little things to help you sort of build up upon what your project you're working on. So sometimes people think of it as criticism. It's not really criticism, but it's It's a way to improve your project into another place.
Hey, Bats, some of
Yeah.
our monster makers are busy introducing multiple characters into their monster story so that we can tell who the monster is, but how, do you have any hints on how you can visually make one character distinguishable on a regular basis from another?
Okay, yeah, so we were talking about silhouettes earlier, right? About the silhouettes about your monsters, and that's a great question, by the way, from Margaret, is that how do you make your characters consistent, right? And one of the things that is, like I was telling you earlier about some animators, some illustrators who create three-dimensional versions of their model, is that they can position them any way they want, and they can also look at them and be like, oh, that's what that character looks like from that angle, right? So say maybe the character is falling down into a well, right? Well, that's what the character looks like if I see it this way, falling into a well. So there's a lot of times, like I said, they create it from, little, sculpture armatures, but also too, you can also keep drawing that character over and over and over again. There was one character, I think, actually it was Groggle in this book here, that I just drew over and over and over again, just to see what he looked like, how he looked, and also to what he looked like from different sides, because Groggle in each page, you see different angles of Groggle throughout the entire book. So, you see him, hanging down. What does Groggle look like from hanging down? What does he look like when he's from the side view? What does Groggle look like when his tongue is out? These are just things, and of course, so, there's maybe about, I would say maybe about 40 different Groggles in this book. So that's 40 different angles and 40 different ways to look at Groggle. And that's my main character in this book here. And if there's other monsters too, I'll show you. There's only one monster in this. There's Groggle and then this other monster in the book, Snarlina, right? And so, I only had to draw only two monsters, right? But it wasn't a complicated book or a story, really, if it was only two. So you don't have to put 5 or 20 characters into your story. It could be one or two characters, Maybe your character is lost in the woods, and your monster is lost, or say your monster is from another planet and has crashed down onto Earth, and doesn't know where the monster is. It comes across maybe some animals along the way, or eventually meets up with someone. So again, you think about just different ways in which your monster comes into an environment too. We have 3 more minutes. Does anyone else have any other questions? So again, for tonight, just take these home. Think about your story. Talk about it with your parents, with your siblings, with your guardians, and see what you can do with your stories. And then we'll come back tomorrow. We can talk a little bit more about them. I'll have more stuff to show you while you're working on your story tomorrow, of books that I've worked on, and also some other authors and illustrators that have worked with different processes of coming up with stories and storyboarding as well, okay? All right, so I'll hand off to Margaret.
So I want to thank Bats again for a lovely workshop. Remember, clean up your space for your on-site workers and probably those working from home as well. Pack everything up and think about your story, as he said, and come back tomorrow with great monsters, dioramas, storyboards, and we will finish up. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all at 10 tomorrow.
All right, hey, everyone, clap for each other. You guys have done a fantastic job, and your monsters look really, 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 really awesome. And I'm really excited to see your storyboards, okay? All right, thanks again, guys.